Boom, how to love yourself more as a nurse. I'm super stoked to be jumping in with an interview on Zoom with my dear friend Sarah Kuipers. She has just written the book The Thriving Giver, and I couldn't recommend this book anymore to anyone who is in the healthcare professions because it pretty much gives you a roadmap for how to prevent burnout and to heal yourself. Who heals the healers? We as healthcare professionals take on a lot of pain, a lot of emotional baggage, and Sarah has a book that is super helpful in remedying this. Stick around for the full interview to get her amazing tips on how to love yourself more as a nurse. Let's dive in. Welcome everyone. I'm joined today with the infamous Sarah Kuipers. Sarah is a trained osteopath and naturopath, and she later specialized in hypnotherapy and life coaching. She currently teaches stress management tools to healthcare professionals and is the author of the newly published book, The Thriving Giver, which, Sarah, I cannot congratulate you enough. It's an epic book. I zoomed through it very quickly, and it's got some amazing tools. I think every healthcare professional should put that on their shelves. And today we're going to be talking specifically about how to love yourself more as a nurse. So welcome, Sarah. And if you just want to go ahead and give a brief introduction.
Yeah, thank you, Logan. So as Logan says, I was trained initially as an osteopath and naturopath, but I worked for many years as a hypnotherapist and life coach, and I was not very good at loving and caring for myself. So eventually I burned out. So the irony was that I wasn't able to practice what I preached. And life was quite demanding because I was a single mother bringing up 3 boys alongside running a successful practice. But after I burnt out, I was intrigued. Why was it so hard for me to take good care of myself? And I was so good at looking after everybody else, but not myself. So that was the root of what led me to write the book. My journey towards discovering what was going on underneath that prevented me from loving and caring for myself, because it's not until we love and care for ourselves that we can really manage stress effectively and avoid burning out.
Amazing. And you and I connected, and we found out that we both really struggled with, I call it autoimmune condition. Eczema in my eyes is autoimmune. You also had autoimmune conditions, right?
Yeah, later on, after I burnt out, I still hadn't learned the lesson enough about loving and caring for myself. So burnout was my first warning, but the autoimmune condition, an overactive thyroid and Graves' disease, was my real wake-up call. Yes.
Wow. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. You have some steps outlined in chapter 1 in your book that we're going to cover today about how to love yourself more, right?
Yes, yes. So the first principle in the book is all about creating supportive beliefs and behaviors that enable you to love, value, and care for yourself. Because what I discovered was very often many of us have childhood patterns and old beliefs and behavior patterns that hold us back from valuing and caring and respecting for ourselves. And if we don't unearth those roots, the roots of those patterns, it's very hard to change. So we need, the core is learning to love and value yourself. And that is putting into action with supportive beliefs and behaviors. So a common beliefs and behavior patterns that hold us back from loving ourselves is the tendency to put other people first. I don't know whether you can relate to that, Logan.
100%. Not now as much, because I learned, and your book has helped me as well.
Yes.
But yeah, what you're talking about here is limiting beliefs, right?
Limiting beliefs and unhelpful behavior patterns. Another one is finding it hard to say no. Yeah. And often we can't say no because we have a fear of upsetting somebody, or we want to be liked. And if we want to be liked, we can't upset them by saying no or setting clear boundaries. But if we can't say no, we can't really love ourselves. So setting clear boundaries and saying no are an important element of being able to love and value ourselves. Yes. Yes.
And can you explain in your own eyes where the disconnect between healthcare workers and their own childhood traumas, or whatever you want to call it, is? Because I know for me, I almost felt like the system was using my compassion and my empathy to give so much, and I didn't understand boundaries. I didn't understand my own needs.
Yes.
And so I just gave too much, and then I burnt out.
Yes. Well, I think that it's a kind of a growing awareness that many of us who are drawn to the health and healing professions may have had childhood experiences that encouraged us to take care of others. We might have grown up in a family where maybe we had a parent or a sibling with mental health problems or addiction problems, and we learned to take care of them. I actually grew up in a family which was very happy and functional, but I still was desperate to please my mother. And I wanted her to love and care for me. And she didn't find motherhood very easy. So I adopted the role of people pleaser. So from when I was tiny, my role in life was to keep my mother happy. So in perpetuating that pattern, I never learned to value and care for myself. I always thought other people's needs were more important. So there's a lot of growing awareness of the fact that our childhood experiences very often encourage us to develop roles that are all around, especially for health professionals, taking care of others, but not so good at taking care of ourselves. And those roots of the behavior patterns often begin in childhood. So many healthcare professionals, in fact, there was one study on 91 student nurses that was done in, I think, in the late 90s. And it discovered that 69% of those nurses were brought up in a family where there was sexual abuse, violence, or alcoholism. That's 69% of those nurses were brought up in really difficult family circumstances. And 74% of those nurses displayed traits of codependency. So if you're a codependent, wow, you're really not good at taking care of yourself. So there's not much research to show that, but certainly in my experience of working with health professionals, our underlying beliefs and behavior patterns, unless we change them, it's very hard to care for ourselves. It's very hard to balance our own needs with the needs of others. And that's what we need to do if we want to avoid burning out.
And that's why you put that in chapter 1, right? Because you basically say, if you do not understand your own patterns, you can take bubble baths, you can take cold showers, you can do all the yoga you want, but you probably won't do it as consistently as you really need, and you won't enjoy it because you have these patterns that you haven't accepted yet, right?
That's right, because in a way, doing the mindfulness and having a regular massage or regular holidays is kind of putting a first aid. It's like putting a plaster over a severe wound. You're not rooting out what the infection that's underneath, the underlying causes of what's making you exhausted or tired. So that's why principle 1 is all about unearthing those roots of poor self-care and learning to love and value and respect and care for ourselves. Yes.
Incredible. So what's principle number 2?
Principle number 2 is about monitoring your well-being, because if you don't monitor how close you are to a critical zone, if you don't recognize that you're starting to feel stressed, or you're heading towards burnout, then you're not going to be proactive in taking care of yourself. So for example, I didn't know the warning signs of burnout, so I didn't recognize those early warning signs. And if I had done, I could have taken better care of myself. And I didn't monitor myself on a regular basis to keep myself healthy, to keep myself well. So I believe that self-monitoring and which is all around awareness of our own well-being on lots of different levels, then that's a crucial element of keeping ourselves healthy and well and functioning at our optimum. Yes.
Yeah, I find it fascinating because, I mean, we were given a lecture in nursing school about burnout and stuff. And I don't remember any of it because probably during that lesson, all of us were like, that's never going to happen to me.
Yes.
And then it happens to you and you're like, holy crap, I wish I actually knew the signs.
Yes.
And for me, I don't know how your burnout experience was, but I describe it as quicksand. You're really stuck. And until something really painful happens, you don't even realize you're in the quicksand. Mm-hmm. And it takes either somebody poking you or you manifesting symptoms to realize, oh, there is a huge issue and I need to make a change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think burnout, often it has quite an insidious onset, so people don't notice it. Whereas if you have a traumatic experience, traumatic stress, then you're more likely to suddenly realize I can't cope. But for me, there was a kind of a growing level of mental, physical, and emotional exhaustion where I felt I had absolutely nothing to give. But I was able to keep going for a long time, even though I was exhausted. And it wasn't until I learned the 3 components of burnout when I was doing my research, my master's in research studying stress and burnout in health professionals, that I realized that several years before I stopped work, I was emotionally numb. And I mean, I'm embarrassed to say this, but it kind of, it gives a really clear lesson. So during the Twin Towers, I was shocked mentally what was going on, but it did not touch me emotionally because I was so shut off from my emotions by that stage.
Wow.
So that shows how emotionally disconnected we can become when we're burning out and continue to work, but not very effectively.
But we as humans are incredibly skilled at adapting to things, even if it's at our own detriment.
Yes, that's it. That's it. That's it. So the key is the more we are aware that we're not functioning well, we're not giving of our best, because when you're burning out, you can't give of your best. If you're not, if you're shut off from your emotions, you lose that sense of compassion and empathy. So you can't work effectively.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's the next step?
So the first step is identifying the beliefs and the behavior patterns that don't support you. So it may be that you have the tendency to put others first and ignore your own needs. Or you might find it hard to say no, or you're a people pleaser like me. Or it could be that you grow up to be a workaholic. Everything you focus on is around work. Or you might be a perfectionist and you just keep pushing away until you get everything perfect. You give yourself a really hard time with unrealistic expectations. So those behavior patterns often have beliefs associated with them. So my belief might be, I have to keep others happy. I have to put everyone else first. I can't say no. Self-care is selfish is a very common one. My needs are not important. Everybody else's needs are more important than my own. So once we recognize those beliefs and behavior patterns, then we can start to do something about it. But unless we recognize what our own role in not taking good care of ourselves and where that originated from, nothing really is going to change. So that's the key step, is identifying the old beliefs and behavior patterns that don't support you in loving, valuing, and caring for yourself. And then the next step is recognizing that maybe when you were young, the chances are those beliefs and behavior patterns might have kept you safe or might have met some need in some way. So my people pleaser tendencies with my mother, it met my need for, I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be appreciated. I wanted to be needed. So it met those needs. Or if you grew up in a family with a sibling who was ill, you kind of help the family carry on functioning reasonably well by taking care of everybody else. But you're not learning to love and value yourself. So it's helpful, and it's kind of very compassionate to ourselves when we recognize the positive intention behind those old patterns. And once we recognize that, or maybe it kept us safe. If you were brought up in a family with a violent step parent, It may not have been safe for you to say no. It may not have been safe for you to, express how you were feeling, or kind of just have arguments with your siblings. So when we recognize how those old patterns might have helped us in the past, then we can be compassionate towards ourselves, and it's easier to let go of them and realize, actually, it was helpful then, but no longer those patterns helpful for me now in my life. And there's a big difference, because what we needed when we were young and what we need as adults, and we don't recognize that.
Yeah, and I think it's an amazing step to have, because oftentimes we are our own worst enemy. We're always saying, oh, I'm not doing things right. And if we look at our limiting beliefs, then we're like, oh, wow, I'm not really good enough, right? And it kind of reinforces it. But when you realize, oh, maybe in my past, for me, I had a parent who was an alcoholic in the family. So there was a lot of walking on eggshells.
Yes.
And there was an inability to ever speak up and have boundaries.
Right.
So yeah, when you can look at it that way, then you can say, oh, it was actually a good thing. And now I choose to let it go.
That's right. That's right. That's a great example, Logan.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
I didn't even think about it until you brought it up.
So there's often a positive intention behind those beliefs. And then it's helpful to look at what might be the benefits of letting go of those old beliefs and behavior patterns. So if I let go of the belief that I can't say no, then I can start to learn to value and care for myself. When I let go of the belief I have to put everyone else first, I can love myself. I can care for myself. That's okay. If we let go of an old belief that self-care is selfish, when we take good care of ourselves, actually everybody benefits, because we've got more to give to others. We work more effectively. So identifying the positive benefits of releasing those old patterns and developing new behaviors helps us, again, in a positive way, to support us in creating new beliefs and believing, actually, it will be great for me to make this change.
Because if you don't have this step, then it's kind of like, oh, I know what I need to do, but I don't know why, right?
That's right.
Okay.
You understand why, and it kind of increases your motivation. So for one person learning to say no, for him, his spiritual development was really important. Is he could start to relate learning to say no as being an important part of his spiritual development. Wow. So then he was really committed to learning to say no.
Yeah, because in my own life, like, learning Spanish has been a challenge for me. But then when I look at, oh, I'm going to be able to talk to my girlfriend's parents, I'm going to actually be able to have conversations, it makes me much more likely to do it versus, oh, this is just hard work.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So looking at the benefits of making those changes is really supportive and kind of helps to motivate us in making the change. And then the fourth step is creating those new beliefs that will enable us to love, value, and care for ourselves. So it might be that as I take better care of myself, I'm learning to value, love, and respect myself. I've got some lovely ones and wonderful ones in the book. Here we go. So it's okay to put myself first sometimes. Each time I stand up for myself, it becomes easier. That's a really important one, because it's step by step. It's not necessarily easy the first time. When I say no to someone, I'm saying yes to myself. Or it's okay if people don't like me when I say no. That's quite a good one. Or when I look after myself, I have more to give to others. As I take care of myself, I model that behavior for my children. And that's a wonderful one when you think about when you're modeling your behavior. If you have children, when you're modeling that behavior and your children are going to grow up, it's okay for them to take care of themselves. So creating new beliefs around loving and valuing and caring for yourself definitely needs to incorporate beliefs around allowing you to say no and to set clear boundaries, because that's part and parcel of loving and valuing yourself. And what I've learned, so many people used to come to see me as a hypnotherapist with a lack of confidence, but actually they needed to learn to be able to say no before they could really build their confidence and value and respect themselves. So creating those new beliefs is, once you write them down and you're really clear about what new beliefs you want to focus on, the next step, the fifth step, is repetition and repeating those beliefs. Now, what I believe is really important is that this is where my understanding about affirmations might differ, is that it's very important for our mind and our body and emotions to be aligned with those new beliefs. So if you have a belief, if you're wanting to start to say no, and yet you feel highly anxious about saying no, it's going to be very hard to change those beliefs. So that's why you might need to incorporate an exercise that I include in the book, Creating the Magical Moments, where you're accessing a sense of heartfelt gratitude and appreciation, which helps you access a feeling of positive emotions, because you want to link the beliefs, the new beliefs, with positive emotions, because then your body is, and your whole mind and your whole being is far more likely to accept them. So repetition of those new beliefs when you're in a kind of positive emotional state is really important, because those beliefs will have been created over a long period of time and with a lot of repetition. So it's a bit like if you're walking through a field with long grass and you're creating a new path. Initially, you're just knocking down the grass, but each time you tread that path, you're making that path clearer and clearer. And it's the same when we're creating new beliefs, is that it's repetition that creates the pathways in the brain. So repetition is absolutely key. And repetition, when we're aligned with that new belief, when we kind of have positive emotions linked to it, is really important. And you can repeat, you can record some people record their beliefs on their mobile phone, and then they listen to them as they're jogging or driving to work. So it's kind of a good time to repeat them is before you go to sleep, or when you first wake up in the morning, because then your mind is particularly receptive, or when you're doing repetitive tasks, even like chopping the vegetables. So repetition of those new beliefs is absolutely key. And once you're repeating the new beliefs, you'll also get a sense of what new behaviors do I need to do, can I allow myself to do now? I can allow myself to put myself first. So I don't always have to say yes to everybody. I can say what I really want to do. And so that new beliefs will be associated with a lot of new and supported behaviors.
Something that I found, and I know we talked about this before, was if we want to actually, we don't even necessarily have to completely believe in the new belief, but there has to be a feeling associated with it, right? Like if you can associate the feeling when you're listening to your affirmations.
Yes.
And for me, I have a gratitude practice every morning, and I get chills down my spine. So I know if I'm not getting that sensation, then I'm not really feeling grateful. Yes. And another thing that I've realized too is, like, if I ever feel anxious, I just tell my mind, oh, I'm excited. They can't tell the difference. It's the same feeling. Yes.
And it's like sometimes in I don't know if you're familiar with neuro-linguistic programming, when you're imagining doing something, in a way you fake it till you make it.
Exactly.
So repeating those beliefs over time, it comes, but the more you can align them with a positive feeling and emotion, the more likely you are to believe in it too. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of my mentors, Jesse Elder, he says, what you appreciate appreciates.
Yes.
And then you become if you appreciate the task of just doing your affirmations, your affirmations will actually become you. Yes. Yeah, beautiful.
No, that's a great one. That's really good. And the interesting thing about appreciation is it's often a heartfelt feeling and emotion. And when you have that feeling of appreciation or gratitude, which is often around the heart, the research shows that gratitude and appreciation is an emotion that's easier to access than many others. And because it's around the heart, it's incredibly beneficial in terms of positive emotions.
Fascinating.
So it's great to have that gratitude practice alongside what you're doing. Yes.
Cool. So those are the main 5. Do you want to recap them real quick?
Yeah. So the first step is identifying the old beliefs and behavior patterns that are holding you back from loving yourself. And then being kind to yourself by looking at the positive intention that when you were younger, those old behavior patterns, they served you some purpose, chances are. And then the third step is looking at the benefits of releasing those old beliefs and behavior patterns, and that amplifies your motivation. And then you create the new beliefs and behaviors around loving and valuing and caring for yourself. And the key is repetition, because without the repetition, you're not creating those new neural pathways in the brain, so it becomes automatic. And the repetition enables those new beliefs to become automatic and unconscious and instinctive. We really believe them once they're really so deeply ingrained in us. Yes. Amazing. So those are the 5 key steps to learn to love, value, and care for yourself. And when we love, value, and care for ourselves, then it's so much easier to manage stress, manage the challenges in our lives, and avoid burning out.
Cool. I'd love to chat more about how you came up with this system, obviously from a lot of trial and error with yourself, right?
Yeah, there was a lot of trial and error for myself, but the first, I read a book when I was doing my research by Grosh and Olson, to psychotherapists, and they identified the importance of looking at the family of origin and the roles we adopt in childhood that influence how we live our lives as adults. So that for me was the starting point. But also as a hypnotherapist, when I worked a lot with my clients, releasing old beliefs and behavior patterns, we often looked at the positive intention behind it and what might be the benefits of releasing those old patterns. And that was part of the hypnotherapy process of was doing those changes and then creating the new beliefs. So in a way, it's been kind of deeply embedded in me for many years.
Incredible. I've found with my own healing journey that, because I do plan on having kids eventually, when you do this kind of deep work, and it's ridiculously hard, I'm sure you can agree to that.
Yeah.
But when you do it, you actually cut off the trauma from your ancestors and your family. Yes. And you actually make your own family tree blossom more. If you can, yes, like what you were saying, teach your kids. How can you teach your kids to love themselves and to say no and have boundaries if you don't, yes, do it yourself?
Yeah. 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 And yeah, so you are breaking those patterns for your children and future generations, which is so important, because so often those patterns are followed through from one generation to the next. Yeah, and sometimes it's not so obvious, but they are in many families. It's really clear if you look at the family history where those patterns originate from.
Yeah, it's really funny because I looked at when I went and visited my grandma recently, she was very particular with things around the house. And then I'm like, that's where my mom got it from. And then I just completely cut that off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, although sometimes we take the opposite route to our parents.
Yeah, exactly what I did.
So,
yeah.
So we don't always follow them exactly, but sometimes we go too far the other way. So it's a matter of finding a balance.
Exactly.
And it's a bit like, I will say, learning to say no. For me, when I first learned to say no, I kind of tended to go a little bit more towards the aggressive side, because I see the kind of assertiveness as the balance between passive and aggressive. And it's really hard sometimes to find the balance between the two. Yeah. And so be kind to yourself. Learning to say no is not easy. It's for me, it's a lifetime's journey.
Communication never ends. It will never end, right?
No, that's right. That's right. So yes.
I would love to hear more about what we've talked about it briefly, but for the listeners, what the writing process was like for you. I know you had this in your head for 10 years, 10 plus years.
Yeah, more than 10 years. When I set out to do my master's in research, I decided then I wanted to write a book rather than do a PhD, because I thought a book would help more people. But the journey since I did my master's in research and then got ill, I kind of carried on learning. So I didn't realize the importance of monitoring ourselves, principle 2. And I also learned a lot more after my research from interviewing lots of different health professionals. So I learned from them, and some of the chapters in the book are specifically as a result of interviewing health professionals. But the process of writing was difficult because as a child, I lacked confidence. My brother was the writer in the family, and it was very, very difficult for me to put in paper what I believed. So that's why I think it's taken me a long time. It's been a kind of developing the confidence to really put my thoughts and beliefs and understanding in writing, but also a journey of learning to let go of writing with bullet points or from an academic perspective. So I've had to learn to write more from my heart and in a way that engages the readers. So that's been a long, slow process.
You've done a fabulous job. The book is so easy to read. It's like you're talking to me, which is exactly what you want. So well done.
Well, I will say, I'm going to put a little thing. When I had really severe writer's block, and one time I went inside and said, "What's holding me back?" And it was such a clear message: learn to write from your heart. Wow. So I went straight to Amazon and I found this wonderful book, Write from Your Heart, by Halzina Bennett. And he opened the door for me to learn to write in a way that engages. He wrote another book on writing spiritual books. And so his 2 books have been really instrumental in helping me learn to engage with the reader. And
Incredible.
Yes.
And the writing process, I mean, for me on my entrepreneurial journey, everything, I think the more you can adapt these principles that you just talked about, the easier your life is going to be, because we become identified with who we are and what we believe in our behaviors. Yes. And they're so hard to change. But when you become identified as somebody who constantly changes, life is much easier, right?
Yes. Oh, that's right. That's right. And then you start to feel more supported. Things come in. Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. You want to hold the book up so people can see?
So here is the book, The Thriving Giver.
Does it come with the sticky notes?
It's got, oh yeah, no, the sticky notes, absolutely. That's when I kind of want to refer, I'm constantly referring to it when I'm writing articles and things. So yes, The Thriving Giver, it's 7 principles for health professionals and caregivers to enhance self-care and prevent burnout. And I just want to say that in a way, the 5 steps for this process are included. For those who don't have a copy of the book, and that might be many of the people listening to this, on my website, I have a free PDF of the workbook that's a companion to this book. So, and that itemizes the different steps of the belief change process that people will find helpful too.
Amazing. And where can the audience find you?
So that is on my website, which is www.sarahkuipers.co.uk, and Kuipers has got a U before the I.
So Kuipers.
Kuipers. That's it.
And then they can find you on Instagram at The Thriving Giver, right?
They can find me on Instagram at The Thriving Giver. Yes. Yes.
Incredible. Thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything else you'd like to tell anyone before we sign off?
No, I just wish that everyone becomes a thriving giver.
Amazing, amazing. All right, Sarah, thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
Thank you very much. Thanks.